Until there is a vaccine, and that could be months and is probably years away, I just don't see people packing into restaurants or going into movie theaters or any enclosed spaces and these human storage facilities that we call office towers with their recirculated air and the thousands of people enclosed in a space. Those places are useless now. We're talking about Seattle's dystopian post-pandemic future, and it's bleak right now, folks. Maybe a miracle vaccine will fix all our problems, but in the meantime, get ready for some surveillance capitalism, the likes of which you have never seen. Your biometric data will become property of the state. Some of it is already being monetized by the likes of Facebook and Google and whatnot, but that ain't nothing. They're going to be scanning your temperature. They're going to be doing infrared, all new technology we don't even know about. And if I sound like Alex Jones here or some kind of tinfoil hat crackpot, no, that is the reality. And this is the Doomed Planet podcast, episode 22. Seattle's dystopian post-pandemic future. We want to support small business, and it's heartbreaking to see restaurants just wiped out in Seattle as elsewhere. And, a lot of the restaurant experience is let's go out and make it an event and have someone else clean up after us and do the dishes. And it'll be expensive, but we can have some drinks, which is where restaurants make their money, from the booze. And we'll be in a crowded room with other people. Probably ventilation is in the kitchen, but who knows what happens in the rest of the restaurant. I remember eating in Belltown at a place called Shallots, and I guess the ventilator was off. I'm sorry, the ventilation system, Freudian slip there, was not working in the kitchen, and suddenly this oily wok smoke filled the entire dining room, and no one seemed to care. And I was like, what are you doing? We have to get out of here. The smoke is bad. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. And so that's the reality of why restaurants are not coming back anytime soon. And of course, it's a low margin business, people barely getting by. And now no one is going to be excited about going to a restaurant or a movie theater. I mean, get real. No one who is sane, that is. Gosh, my friend Fred does have a thriving small business. He's gone through some rebranding changes, but he finally hired a marketing guy and a graphic designer. He started out as Fred's Guillotine Supply, and that changed after a couple weeks to Fred's Civil Insurrection Superstore. And now Fred is kind of branching out. Business has been unreal, so unreal that it's insane. And he is now Chop Mart. And we are proud here at the Doom Planet podcast to have Chop Mart as a sponsor.
And now, advertising from our sponsor.
Sharp blades plus gravity, that's the situation. Head buckets, blood drainage all across the nation. No more billionaires, no more plutes, that's the solution. Come on down to Chop Mart to get with the revolution. Chopping, slicing, heads are rolling, everyone dies. We got pitchforks, torches, and guillotine supplies. Chop Mart, 1789 Skagsport Way South, Central Woolley, Washington, USA, 98284.
So if we can go back to the financial crash of 2008, remember that when Obama bailed out Wall Street and none of the Wall Street crooks ended up going to jail? That tragic event was very vindicating for me. It was just reassuring. It was a confirmation that I had lived my life up until that point, not as a corporate suck-up, but as someone trying to be independent, trying not to get sucked into the rat race. And so instead of thinking, oh, my 401k is down 50%, or I've lost 50% of all the money that I've grubbed up until that point in my life, I was just like, yeah, fuck it. fuck everybody, and you're going to lose everything. Going back much further in time, I had a series of temp jobs when I was younger. That's what the gig economy was called back then. One of the first was in Tukwila. It's a suburb south of Seattle. And I'd have to drive from Capitol Hill, the neighborhood where I lived at the time, to Tukwila. And I remember it was dark in the morning on my commute and dark in the evening on the way home. And, it was on the hellscape that is the I-5 highway. And it was just lots of traffic and rain and darkness. I was like, I'm not going to fucking live my life this way. I'm not going to be stuck commuting back and forth every day to some meaningless job. And from the likes of looking at the people working at these jobs, because, as a temp worker, you get to bounce around to different corporate atmospheres. People are miserable, and a lot of the jobs are just unnecessary, busy work, really. At one engineering firm that I temped at, a lot of I think they were building the Potlatch Pulp and Paper Mill, which is a giant factory that takes trees and turns them into paper products. And it's quite a complex system. And anyway, a bunch of the engineers were former Boeing people. And many Boeing people are former military people. And this was the time of the first G.H.W. Bush's first Gulf War. And there was one engineer who was openly against the war in this giant office filled with people. And these other engineers were all right-wing dicks, and they hated this guy. They called him a communist. Another job was at the Caterpillar Tractor Company at the Scheduled Oil Sampling Lab. And they would process these big machines. You got to always check their oil and make sure it's kosher. And so you have your rig up in Alaska, you would send a oil sample to this lab, and then we would process it somehow. And then they would dump the oil in this sink. And I was like, well, where does that sink go? And they're like, oh, that goes to the a used oil storage tank. And I just never believed that. This other engineering firm, for a young artist, this was the glory days. They had an entire room filled with art supplies, every pencil and marker and other art gadget you can imagine. And so I pilfered from that. And eventually I was blacklisted by every employment agency in town, and that was a good thing. I learned a lot and made some money. Okay, so now we go ahead to 2020, and we have a pandemic. And boy, the way that I've lived my life honorably, I think, boy, am I vindicated now. I mean, the last financial crisis was like, hey, you did all right, and you made the right choices, and now I'm thinking, okay, I'm more prepared for this than anyone. So our children were already being homeschooled. I already had a life of mostly working for my own small businesses and or working from home. The better half, like all tech workers in Seattle, was told to work from home. And that is working great right now. And I see a future where you go in maybe one day a week. Again, the office building is a useless expense for a lot of these companies, including Amazon, which has spent billions of dollars building these massive towers all over South Lake Union, LEED certified, and then the special Amazon spheres, a big couple balls filled with exotic plants. Well, no one needs that. Amazon is now out until October, I hear. Not the poor serfs in the warehouses, but the well-compensated tech bros. They're going to be working from home until October, and those big human storage facilities that used up so many of the Earth's resources and were so expensive, they're just sitting empty. What else makes me morally superior and the king of sanctimony? Let's see, I've always avoided air travel like the plague. I hate being on an airplane. rammed into a tube with a few hundred other people, all breathing in the same recirculated stale air. I've also avoided any kind of office job where you're in, again, a towering human storage facility. I've also been trolling billionaires for many years. You can look up Paul Alien. It's a video mocking Seattle billionaire Paul Allen, who passed away recently. And of course, you can see at Bezos Town. It's a Twitter account that trolls billionaires. So I've been on the leading edge surfing that trend, and that's a huge trend right now. People are realizing, okay, wait a minute. So we have no money, but 8 families control half of the world's wealth. Wait, really? No, I'm schizophrenic, and that's a fantasy world that I live in that can't possibly be true. That's science fiction, right? That's real? My God. We'll be right back. So again, Alex here, speaking from a position of privilege, obviously. White male, kids don't have serious problems, home full of dogs and wonderful bunnies, health insurance right now through the better half who has a corporate job, able to do a podcast. But I have something so lacking, at least among politicians these days, and that's empathy. It pains me to see the suffering out there. And boy, by this summer, people are not only going to still be unemployed, but they're not going to have food. And we'll see how that turns out. Usually throughout history, when you run out of food, that's when the real trouble starts. In Seattle's post-pandemic future, that is until there is a vaccine, months or years from now, the airline industry is crushed. I mean, people are realizing, wow, it's dangerous for humanity, but also just wasteful to get on a fucking gas-guzzling airplane to go meet Phil in Cincinnati for, business dick meeting. Phil is on the fucking video conference now, so just do it that way. Cruise ships are toast. I can't imagine anyone, no matter how stupid, wanting to be on a cruise ship, which is a giant Petri dish of thousands of people packed into one area. It's this weird middle-class bougie striver thing anyway. I mean, let's be honest. Wealthy people already have boats. You're not going to meet the wealthy and fabulous on a cruise ship. Those days of the Cunard Line and the QE2 and then going back to the Titanic where the cruise ships, sure, there was steerage and the poor people, but it was also a playground for the very rich. You're going back and forth from New York to London. That is dead. That industry is dead. As I've mentioned before, scuttle the ships to build artificial reefs for marine wildlife. School. God. As a privileged person, I went to college and I thought, well, I'm going to stick with this because I haven't accomplished much in my life. And I did, but boy, what a fucking waste of time and money. The real world is out there waiting for you and it's supplemented by the internet. So think real hard about school, especially if you're a liberal arts major. Now, if you're a scientist or an engineer or an architect, then yes, you're going to need some school, but there are lots of other options. And so this pandemic has really kind of laid that out. I mean, we were homeschooling our kids anyway because of a failed Seattle school system. We might do an episode about that because this is a true crime podcast after all. But yeah, it's working out. You don't have to warehouse kids to train them to be stuck somewhere they don't want to be 8 hours a day. That's just training for Amazon warehouse workers, not school.
Yo, I'm a tortilla.
I'm a tortilla, baby. I got cheese.
I got beans.
I got the little bit of meat and sour
Sour cream.
Restaurants are done, and I've worked in that industry a lot, and I know a lot of people that own restaurants. I know, Tom Douglas, the guy that owned 12 restaurants. We have mercilessly eviscerated him on this podcast, but I almost feel for him too. But if you have a restaurant or maybe a restaurant or three, you make your money by packing people in there and by serving drinks. The profit margin on the drinks is what keeps you alive. And these restaurants have been doing cocktail kits and to-go drinks and stuff. Well, people are realizing, wow, I could cook at home now, and I can buy and mix my own drinks. It's too bad. Restaurants are a beautiful thing, a beautiful, diverse thing, but in Seattle's post-pandemic future, it's going to be takeout. And maybe that's the way it should be. All of my beloved restaurants in the International District, those that will survive, will be doing takeout. Any red-blooded American knows that Chinese takeout is super delicious, even though the Americanized Chinese food is all that most of us have had. But that's good too. That's just another subgenre. Salute to Fabak. That's on Seattle's Rainier Avenue. It's actually, there's two buildings. One is shaped like a boat, and that part of that building is closed, and the other building has pho to go. So you order in advance and go pick up your pho, and that's the future of Seattle dining. It's also a life-changing, comforting dish. I want to be an optimist and look forward to a future where for-profit healthcare is gone. When people look back at how many lives have been lost because of our broken, corporatized, for-profit healthcare system, how many people have needlessly died during this pandemic, then hopefully that'll be enough. That'll be, okay, let's just do this like every other sane, developed country is doing, especially in the world of elder care. I mean, it's been a massacre in these nursing homes. And when you look at that industry, this is an industry that exploits non-union, minimum wage immigrant labor. And most of the workers there are Black or Hispanic women with very few other options. And even before the pandemic, the industry was troubled, especially for safety violations, including those that would spread disease, reuse of gloves, lots of horrible things. So that has to change. And Medicare for All obviously has to cover adult home care. That's just sanity. And what about the work, the future of work? Andrew Yang is one of the biggest wankers in history. He participated in the debacle that was the Democratic primary, a disgraceful catastrophe on all counts that has brought us, at this point, Joe Biden. But he did have a point. Universal basic income might be a thing. I mean, you want people with no jobs, fine, but they have no food. Well, you better get them some fucking money for food or they're going to burn the place down. So I do see a future of universal basic income. And again, this pandemic has kind of exposed the fact that many people's jobs are useless. The delivery people, the grocery people, those are essential jobs. Healthcare, essential. But being a hedge fund dick, just moving money around, that's useless shit, and that should be eliminated. And, of course, billionaires. What will become of our billionaires in the future? I hope that we can tax them, especially here in Washington State. We have the most regressive tax system in the nation, even though we have a bunch of ridiculous billionaires and a long list of people that are worth $1 billion or $2 billion or a few hundred million or 50 million. I mean, people need to pay their fair share of taxes. God, everything has been fucked up by this virus. The meat industry. We see these big Purdue and Smithfield, these giant corporate meat companies, their processing facilities are being shut down because the workers in this hideously dangerous and low-paying job are coming down with the virus. And President Trump declared that the meat factories should remain open. But let's reconsider what the hell this is. This is literally a slaughterhouse where tens of thousands of animals are processed every day, and it's not the healthiest way to produce food. So we need to go back to a point where meat is just more expensive because the animals are happy and they're being grown on small farms and not in these hideous animal concentration camps, and that's what they are. The suffering is unbearable. So let's let these fucking big pork processors and these big companies just die. Seattle's dystopian post-pandemic future, what's it going to look like? Again, if you want to be positive and look at the bright side, we could say, okay, Boeing was nationalized, downscaled, and because people don't fly anymore, and Amazon was nationalized and became part of the best postal service in human history, as well as the largest unionized workforce in human history and the most diverse. But wait a minute, post-pandemic future, dystopian future, that the dystopia is here. We're in a dystopic nightmare. I went downtown the other day with my kid and we were wandering around Pioneer Square, and it's deserted, and they're the only people on the streets were homeless and the mentally ill, and those populations can cross over. But boy, scary. J&M Cafe boarded up, one of Seattle's oldest bars. It's actually a scene from the John Wayne movie McHugh, was filmed there in 1973. But wow, there's a graffiti renaissance in Seattle, so that's a good thing. Also, a part of every dystopic movie is the gang graffiti or the graffiti. But there's a lot of graffiti in Seattle right now, and unfortunately, some of the taggers are not obeying the taggers code, and that is to avoid marking on small businesses. But, the boarded up windows are fair game for not just tagging, but all manner of art. So deserted streets, vagrants running around. Really, it's like a John Carpenter movie. We did run into Tim Harris and his daughter, one of his daughters. Tim is the publisher of Real Change magazine, which is a homeless newspaper. You buy the newspaper from Real Change and sell it and make a profit, and it's a great thing. Tim is a good guy. Sadly, in Seattle, for every Tim, there are 500 software developers who prioritize making as much money as they can, doing their useless work over, helping the freaking homeless. And again, before the pandemic, there are tents everywhere, people literally living on the streets. And that's dystopic, right? Or is that that's normal? So we got a little time to cover some of our other sections, but wrapping up the Seattle's dystopian post-pandemic future, total biometric surveillance capitalism. That is your future.
I'm a person. They're gonna kill us all. I wish I was shorter because they like people that are tall.
I have a friend who ran a very successful escort service long ago, and his employees were very happy, and the feds could not get one single person to drop a dime on him. But he gets a free pass on the Doomed Planet Seattle True Crime podcast because he's a good guy. And I used to work for him and also some very shady, low-life Seattle rock promoters. But we have other ideas for episodes, and, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us, doomedplanetpod@gmail.com. We're thinking of doing Dave Beck the labor leader. I mean, the list of Seattle criminals is endless. Lou Graham was an early madam in the old days when it was the gold, whiskey, and prostitutes era of Seattle. Dave Meinert, someone that I know well, had some Me Too allegations. He also gets a free pass, although the free pass does not include me not mentioning him by name. He owns a couple bars, and I can't imagine that they're doing well, so free pass, Dave. For now. Seattle pornographer Seth Warshawski. I worked for him for a brief time. Craig Diefenbach, who's a drug enthusiast and scam artist. And he's out of jail right now. He'd make a good episode, especially if we could interview him. And Lane Staley's Last Days. I have got a bunch of material about Lane, and I don't know, he might get a free pass too because the story is just so sad. Washington Governor Jay Inslee has extended the stay-at-home order through at least May 31st. And a bunch of Trump-loving hilljacks heard that, and they flocked to the Spokane courthouse to protest. Hundreds of protesters packed together, spreading their aerosols. Also in the news, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk have won contracts from NASA to send astronauts to the moon. And if you're a child of the 60s, you will remember they used to say, boy, we can land a man on the moon, but we can't solve any of the problems down here on Earth. It's a great piece in the Post. My Native American father drew the Land O'Lakes maiden. She was never a stereotype. And if you remember the old cardboard butter packs of Land O'Lakes butter, you could cleverly cut out the maiden's chest with a razor, and then if you folded up her knees, they became boobs. And that's not even mentioned in this article. Also, it is a fucking stereotype. It doesn't matter if it was designed by a Native American. And as far as I know, not many Native Americans churned butter or made dairy products. I could be mistaken. Uninterestingly, this advertising guy also drew the Hamm's Beer Bear, a friendly, kind of Flintstone-y looking, Yogi Bearish looking beer-bellied bear that was used to sell Hamm's beer, a beer that was always terrible. And now it exists only as a brand and a logo because the original brewery was bought up again and again, and now someone just owns the rights to the brand and maybe sells that shit beer to this day. I'm not sure. I don't go to Minnesota much. We do have a section called Supermarket Shootout, even though that's an inappropriate thing in a way. So I was at Safeway. And yes, I'm wearing an N95 mask and fucking gloves. Half of the people working there, if they have a mask, it's an improvised mask. And a bunch of them have it pulled down below their nose. So the guy packing my groceries has this improvised cloth mask, but it's down below his nose. Just complete insane idiocy. Anyway, I was tempted to buy some Nova salmon. And boy, I thought that's going to be good. There's nothing better than wild caught, according to the package, salmon. Well, if you look at the ingredients, I feel as if I've been raped in a way by capitalism. Of course, we all feel that way now. Every single minute of every single day. Ingredients, chum salmon. Okay, that's a lower grade of the fish. Salt, yes. Sugar, okay. Sodium benzoate, oh. Sodium erythorbate, sodium nitrite, added as preservatives. FD&C yellow number 5, yellow number 6, red number 40, blue number 1, and natural hardwood smoke. That is a catastrophe. So thank you, Ocean Beauty Seafoods, for that wonderful salmon. It's still in the fridge. Can you imagine having smoked salmon or lox in your fridge for longer than like a couple hours? Well, this shit is, and I don't think I'll let my kids eat it. That's been Supermarket Shootout.
And also, we have to do podcast shout out.
Podcast, shout out.
Hi, I'm Michael Moore, and I do a podcast called Rumble. And it's sponsored by Audible. And Audible is owned by Amazon. But I'm not going to tell you that because I have some character flaws. And I need the money because podcasting is really expensive. You have to have a microphone and a computer, and the rest is free. And I want more money from Amazon. This has been Rumble.
Podcast shout out.
So that's it. That's our podcast. We were hoping, we started this out in December of last year, knowing 2020 was going to be a tumultuous year. We had no idea. And I was recording about a month in advance. And now I think I'm recording same day when I feel like it. And that's the beauty of a podcast. It can be as long as or as short as you want. And it's like a radio show where you can use profanity and where there's no, like at NPR, it's going through a filter like, oh, we can't say this about Joe Biden because my boss won't like that. Well, I can say whatever the fuck I want about that ghoul. And he is a satanic, I'd say a psychopath, but because he suffers from dementia, just his brain is a sponge. He no longer has that killer instinct. He's now just a fool. At our former school, we were walking the dogs on the playground, and all the playground equipment is taped over with caution tape. It's really sad, but I want to leave you on a positive note, and that is that my friend Fred and his guillotine supply company that's called Chop Mart is doing a thriving business. Business has never been better. This has been the Doomed Planet Podcast, episode 22, Seattle's dystopian post-pandemic future. Goodbye.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Goodbye, this is it.